شادی دل حضرت زهرا سلام اللهم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Last night we talked about dua and requesting from the Creator and how it has some manners, some adab. 5 of them we went over last night. The first was to come and talk to the Creator with a pure heart. When I ask something from my Creator, when I request something from Him, it should be true. I shouldn't be distracted with any things other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Manner 1. Manner 2 is that when I ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it should be verbally through my speech. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything that goes on in our hearts and minds, but He prefers it through our speech. In a hadith from the Sadiq alayhi salam, He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything that goes on in this world, everything that goes on in the hearts of everyone. Even though He knows this, He still prefers that the creation requests and asks from Him verbally through their speech. This is the second manner. The third manner is to keep what we ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ourselves. Some of us, when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something, for example, to get wealthy, for example, to get a good grade in my university, for example, we go around and tell everyone, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for being wealthy, I pray to Him so I can get a good grade. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prefers that the creation keeps what they have between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and themselves, not to tell it to everyone else. In a hadith from the Ramadon Night, he says that one dua that is kept to oneself is equivalent to 70 du'as that are told to everyone else. This is the third manner. The fourth manner is that when someone asks from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they expect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give it to them. What does this mean? To have husn dhan. This means that whenever I ask something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whenever I request something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm sure and certain that He can give it to me. Though sometimes He may not accept it, but if it's good for me and it's actually beneficial for me, I'm sure and certain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give it. And another hadith from the Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that whenever you ask something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, imagine and picture it being at the front of your doorstep. Have that much certainty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give what you want if it's beneficial for you. The fifth one is repetitively asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whenever I want something from the Creator, it is of good manners and it is of adab for me to ask the Creator repetitively, more than once. To keep continuously asking the Creator for what I want. Please salawat ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Now, there is one dua, one prayer, one request from someone so special to the eyes of Allah that it is always accepted. And that is the prayer of the parents. The dua that the walidain do. The dua that the parents do. Now, we all have lots of different responsibilities in our lives. From school to work to studying, so much different things. And just as we have these worldly responsibilities, we also have responsibilities that have connections to my religion and to my faith. And including in one of these is respecting the parents. Imam Ali alayhi salam in his hadith says, Birrul walidain akbaru faridatin. Asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, respecting the parents for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one of the biggest and most important responsibilities that a person has. Whenever I respect my parents, whenever I am kind towards them, this itself is a responsibility that I should have. Now, does this responsibility only specify the people who are Muslim? In a hadith from the Imam Rida alayhi salam, he says, Birrul walidin wajibun wa in kana al mushrikain. respect to the parents, respect to your walidain is wajib. No matter what, the Imam Rida alayhi salam, he says, respecting your parents and having kindness towards them is wajib. It's obligated for you to, it's obligatory for you, even if they are both disbelievers, if they don't believe in Islam. So it's not specified for only those who are Muslim, not specified for just those who are very faithful, but for everyone in this world. Whether my parents are believing or not, it's up onto me, and it is my responsibility to be grateful to them. Now, among respect and gratitude and thanks towards the parents is following what they tell us to do. Now, this might be very a part of the topic that has today, but it's something that has to be brought. In the continuation of the hadith, Imam Rida alayhi salam says, وَلَا طَاعَةٌ لَهُمَا فِي مَعِسَةِ الْخَالِقِ. Imam Rida alayhi salam, in the continuation of the hadith, says that respecting your parents is wajib. So acting to what they do is wajib. Yes, this is definitely a must do, except that if they tell you to do something that is against the rules and laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you shouldn't follow them in these types of places. Please salawat ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Respect to the parents, birr to the parents is so important and seen so nice and kind in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in a hadith, he says, al-afdalul a'mal, the best of actions are as-salatu li-waqtaha, prayer in its time, wal-jahadu fi sabilillah, and fighting in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa birrul walidain, and respect to the parents. Respect to the parents is seen as so important. Kindness towards the parents is seen as so important that it has even been put besides fighting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, putting my life on the line for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being kind and respectful to the parents is not just a responsibility without benefits, but there are so many things that one can gain from this. Whenever a person is respectful to their parents, is kind to their parents, and causes them happiness, they surely have caused the happiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In a hadith from the prophets, our prophet, the Prophet Muhammad, he says, Man arada waliday faqad arada Allah. Whoever makes their parents satisfied, makes their parents happy, gains their gratitude, gains their happiness, they have surely gained the happiness and satisfaction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can also see that this responsibility has also been brought in the Quran. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَلَا تَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Sadaqallahul Aliyyul Azim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also brought this responsibility in the Quran. Now, as we said at the beginning, there is one type of dua that is accepted no matter what. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts this dua, and that's the dua and the prayer of the parents. In a hadith from the Prophet again, he states 4 types of people that their prayers and their requests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are always accepted. One of them being the parents. An example for this is the Jalis or companion of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. One day the Prophet, now every single Prophet, they all have companions that will be besides them in heaven, in the hereafter. One day the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, while he was talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he questioned Allah and asked him, Oh Allah, who is my Jalis? Who is my companion in the hereafter? The Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then sent Jibreel down with a message and told him that it is a butcher, someone who sells meat, and they are in this location. And so Prophet Musa was curious. He wanted to see what this butcher or what his Jalis or companion would be like. So one day he decided to go and take a look, watch and see what this butcher was like, what his companion was like. He went and saw it was a normal butcher, someone who sold meat, and that he wouldn't do anything out of the ordinary really. He would sell meat, but after he would finish up, he would also take a bit of meat home so he can eat. So the Prophet Musa ﷺ then followed him to his home and asked him if he didn't want any guests. He asked the butcher if he didn't want any guests. The butcher then replied, "Come in, you're the Prophet. Of course we would like to invite you to our home." The Prophet ﷺ then entered his home, and this butcher, this person that sold meat, was making food. He cooked the food, he got everything ready. And he also brought this elderly woman, this elderly aged woman down. He washed her and then he fed her the food. And after he did all of this, the Prophet Musa noticed that the elderly aged woman was mumbling something. He couldn't really tell. Usually people, when they're elderly aged, when they are very old, it is hard for them to speak clearly. It's hard for them to speak easier. So the Prophet Musa ﷺ wasn't able to tell what this elderly aged woman was trying to say. So after the butcher, helped out, he put the elderly aged woman back in her resting place, and he came back to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet asked him, "Who was this woman and what was your collection like? What is your situation like?" The butcher said that, "Oh Prophet, our situation is in a way that I can't really hire anyone to watch after my mother because I'm not very rich and I don't have a lot of money. So I have to go to my mother and myself every single day and watch over her and wash her and feed her food." Then the Prophet saw how kind he was to his mother, and another question arose. What was the thing that his mother said to him? The mother he said that my mother would always tell this to me after I would wash her and give her food. She would say, غَفَرَ اللَّهُ لَكَ وَجَعَلَ جَلِيسَ مُوسَى يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فِي قُرْبَتِهِ وَدَرَجَتِهِ. May Allah bless you and may He place you as the companion of Prophet Musa in the Day of Judgment and make you his companion and have you by his side. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the dua that this butcher's parent has done to him, He gave him the placement and the position of the companion of Prophet Musa alayhi salam in the hereafter. This is an example for just one of the many different examples that there are of the effects of prayers from your parents. Now, just as there are benefits to respecting the parents, to gaining their happiness and satisfaction, there are also lots of very big dangerous effects that might happen to someone if they disrespect their parents, if they cause unsatisfaction. In the continuation of the hadith from the Prophet, our Prophet, the Prophet Muhammad, he says, "Man arada waliday faqad arada Allah." Whoever gains the happiness and satisfaction of their parents, they have gained the satisfaction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the continuation, the Prophet says, وَمَنْ أَسْقَطَ وَالِدَيْهِ فَقَدْ أَسْقَطَ اللَّهِ. The person who dissatisfies their parents, who makes their parents angry towards them, unhappy towards them, they have surely made Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unhappy towards them. Thanking your parents, showing your gratitude towards them, being grateful to them, making them happy, satisfied of you, is one of the biggest responsibilities that we have, and a responsibility that doesn't come without benefits, but with benefits. This responsibility can cause and might be the result of my parents praying for me, and definitely their prayers and the requests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are accepted. But just as it has a benefit and it is a responsibility for me to respect them and show kindness to them, it is also a very big danger zone for me to be disrespectful towards them, be unkind towards them, make them dissatisfied with me. Now, in a certain phrase that is usually used in the Revelations, they say aq wa aqul walidain. This means the dissatisfaction or the uncomfortableness that the parents might have towards their children. Aq is usually the sound that is given when someone is uncomfortable. Aq. Sometimes we say this. This itself is extremely resented in Islam. Now, this may be a term used for generality, that aq is not just talking about akh or the sound effect that they might make when they're uncomfortable, dissatisfied, but any type of dissatisfaction and unhappiness that the parents might have towards their children. And another hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, he says that whoever has the akh of their parents, they will not be under the blessing and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will not be respected and looked as honored in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we see, has regarded respect to the parents as a very important responsibility. And just as there is importance in respecting them, there is importance in keeping ourselves away from from disrespecting them, from their dissatisfaction, from their unhappiness. That the Prophet even says that those who have the akh, the dissatisfaction, the unhappiness of their parents, they will not be under the blessing and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, there are many different types of acts that one might do to gain the dissatisfaction and happiness of their parents. And among these acts, and not just the act which might cause dissatisfaction and happiness towards their parents, but to everyone, is takabbur, istikbar, arrogance, high self-esteem in such a way that someone might look at others as they are worthless beings. Now this takabbur has such dangers that even in a hadith they say that whoever has the tiniest bit of takabbur in their hearts, they will not be allowed to enter paradise, which we'll be going over in the future nights inshallah. I thank you for giving your time. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin.